The air in our house, once crisp with fresh linen and the faint scent of my gardenias, had slowly, imperceptibly grown stale. It wasn't a pungent smell that assaulted the senses, but a subtle, pervasive mustiness, like a memory fading in an attic. For years, I'd cultivated an existence that, from the outside, gleamed with the polished sheen of perfection. Our home, a sprawling craftsman nestled amongst ancient oak trees, was a testament to Mark's meticulousness and my aesthetic eye. Every cushion was fluffed, every antique lamp perfectly angled to cast a warm, inviting glow. We hosted charming dinner parties, our laughter echoing through the high ceilings, a symphony of contentment. Our shared social media was a curated tableau of happy anniversaries, sun-drenched vacations, and perfectly plated meals. We were, to all appearances, the couple, the one people envied, the one young lovers aspired to emulate. But within the walls of that beautiful house, a silent, gaping void had begun to form between Mark and me. It wasn't born of explosive arguments or dramatic betrayals. No, it was far more insidious than that. It was forged in the quiet spaces, in the unspoken words, in the touches that became routine rather than resonant. Our conversations, once meandering rivers that flowed into the deep ocean of shared dreams, had narrowed into polite exchanges about household logistics and weekend plans. Did you remember to pick up the dry cleaning? What do you want for dinner? Are we still on for the Millers on Saturday? Each question a functional brick, building a wall higher and higher between us, instead of a bridge. I remembered a time when Mark's hand, finding mine across the dinner table, would send a jolt of warmth through me, a silent promise. Now, his touch was more often a comforting pat on the shoulder, a familiar habit, devoid of the electric current that once defined us. Our physical intimacy, too, had retreated. It became a scheduled event, an obligation more than a desire. The lights were always out, the movements predictable, a mechanical dance performed in the dark, leaving me feeling more alone than before. After, as his breath evened out beside me, the silence of the room would amplify the hollowness in my chest. I would lie awake, staring at the dimly lit ceiling, a suffocating blanket of emptiness pressing down on me. I'd trace the patterns of the stucco, each groove a reminder of a forgotten longing, a suppressed sigh. My eyes would burn, but no tears would come. It was a dryness, an arid landscape inside, where once had bloomed vibrant emotion. Thoughtful, I often caught my reflection in the polished glass of our dining room hutch, a woman with carefully styled blonde hair, eyes that held a certain weary resignation, a faint smile permanently etched in place. She looked composed, put together, the perfect wife, sad. But beneath that veneer, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, drifting through rooms filled with beautiful objects that held no meaning for me. I'd find myself lingering in the garden, running my fingers over the velvety petals of a rose, feeling more connection to the delicate life of the flower than to the man who shared my bed. Exhales. The scent of damp earth, the buzzing of bees, the vibrant hues of the hydrangeas, these were my solace, my quiet companions in a loneliness that grew heavier with each passing season. Mark, for his part, seemed oblivious, or perhaps expertly disguised his own awareness. He was immersed in his work, in his meticulous routines, in the comfortable rhythm we had established. He'd often say, "We have a good life, darling, a very good life." And I would nod, a small, practiced smile on my face, the words catching in my throat, choking on the unspoken truth that a good life could still be profoundly, achingly lonely. I longed to shatter the glass, to scream, to feel something, anything, beyond this numb, polite existence. The perfect life was an illusion, a magnificent cage built of gilded bars, and I was slowly, silently, suffocating inside it. It was within this desolate landscape of my soul that a small, dangerous flicker of warmth began to emanate from an unexpected source, a spark that would ultimately ignite a conflagration that threatened to burn everything to ashes. And that source was Mark's brother, Leo. Leo was, in many ways, Mark's opposite. Where Mark was precise, Leo was fluid. Where Mark favored structure, Leo embraced spontaneity. He was an artist, a photographer with a perpetually rumpled shirt and eyes that seemed to hold both deep contemplation and mischievous humor. He'd always been a fixture in our lives, a satellite orbiting our perfectly ordered world, occasionally dropping in for family dinners, bringing with him a faint scent of turpentine and an air of gentle chaos. Curious, I'd always found him charming, in a distant, brother-in-law sort of way. Thoughtful, I admired his artistic sensibility, the way he saw beauty in the mundane, his easy laugh that seemed to bubble up from a deeper, more genuine place than the polite chuckles I exchanged with Mark. The shift began subtly, a barely perceptible tremor beneath the surface of our familial interactions. It started at one of our obligatory Sunday brunches, a sprawling affair on our patio. Mark was discussing his new investment portfolio with his father, his voice a drone in the background. My eyes, however, were drawn to Leo, who was sketching in a small notebook, oblivious to the family chatter. I approached him, a glass of iced tea in hand. "What are you working on?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. He looked up, his dark eyes crinkling at the corners, a faint smudge of graphite on his cheek. "Just trying to capture the way the light hits that old oak," he murmured, gesturing with his pencil towards the grand tree at the edge of our property. "It's got this incredible resilience, you know? Seen so much, yet still stand." Still reaching. Thoughtful. Something about his observation, the way he articulated a quiet profundity in a simple tree, resonated with the quiet yearning in my own soul. Mark would have commented on the tree's age, or its potential value to the property. Leo saw its story. We talked for an hour then, lost in a bubble of shared appreciation for things beyond the superficial. We discussed art, literature, the silent language of nature. Grateful. It was like breathing oxygen after years of holding my breath. I felt seen, truly seen, not as Mark's wife, not as the hostess, but as Sarah, a woman with her own thoughts and insights. Later that evening, long after Leo had left, a text message buzzed on my phone. "Great conversation today. Felt like I could actually breathe." It was from Leo. Surprised, my heart gave a strange little flutter, a sensation I hadn't felt in years. I hesitated, then replied, "Me too. Thank you." The exchange was innocuous, yet it felt charged. The next few weeks, these texts became a quiet ritual. We would message about a book we were both reading, a documentary we'd watched, a piece of music. The texts started innocent, then drifted into the personal. He'd ask how my day really was, not just the surface-level pleasantries. He'd share his own frustrations, his artistic struggles, his quiet hopes. Thoughtful, I found myself pouring out small fragments of my inner world, things I hadn't dared to articulate to anyone, least of all Mark. The adrenaline began to pump through my veins with each notification, a peculiar mix of excitement and apprehension. My phone became a dangerous, thrilling secret. I'd check for his messages under the dinner table, in the bathroom, tucked away in my study. My thumb would hover over his name, a delicious, forbidden warmth spreading through my chest before I even read his words. I'd feel a blush creep up my neck when I saw his name, even when Mark was in the next room, completely oblivious, engrossed in a financial report. The guilt was a dull throb at first, a distant echo. "He's your husband's brother. This is wrong. You're betraying Mark." But the exhilarating rush of being truly connected, truly engaged, was a powerful anesthetic to that guilt. I started to notice little things about Leo I hadn't before. The way his hair fell across his forehead, the expressive lines around his eyes when he laughed, the subtle tremor in his hands. And he was passionate about an idea. At family gatherings, my gaze would seek him out across the room, a silent magnet drawing my attention. Our eyes would meet, and a private current would pass between us, a shared understanding that nobody else noticed. He started staying later after dinners, lingering to help me clean up, his presence a comforting warmth in the otherwise silent kitchen. Whispers. We'd talk in hushed tones, the clinking of dishes punctuating our conspiratorial whispers, the intimacy of those moments growing exponentially. Surprised. One evening, after another long, quiet conversation, he reached out, almost involuntarily, and brushed a stray strand of hair from my face. His fingers lingered for a fraction of a second, a spark igniting between us that was undeniably physical. My breath hitched, his eyes, dark and intense, searched mine, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a reflection of my own longing, my own fear. Rushed, I pulled back, my heart hammering against my ribs. A sudden, frantic rhythm. Whispers. I should I should get back to Mark, I mumbled, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded, his face unreadable, but the electricity in the air crackled, leaving a phantom touch on my cheek. I walked away, my legs feeling like jelly, a tumultuous storm raging inside me. The line, once so distinct, was blurring, dissolving under the insistent pressure of unspoken desires and undeniable connection. I was teetering on a precipice, and the thrill of the fall was beginning to eclipse the fear of impact. The line wasn't crossed in a moment of drunken abandon or a spontaneous burst of reckless passion. It was an agonizingly slow, deliberate descent, each step weighed down by internal protest and propelled forward by an unbearable craving. The air between Leo and me had become thick, palpable, heavy with unspoken desire. Every glance was a conversation, every touch, even an accidental brush of hands, an electric jolt. The texts had grown bolder, laced with a tenderness and vulnerability that shook me to my core. "I find myself thinking about you all the time, Sarah," he'd written late one Tuesday night. "About the way you laugh, the light in your eyes when you talk about your garden." My fingers trembled as I read it, my stomach clenching with a perverse thrill. The specific moment, the irreversible step, occurred on a cold, rain-swept Friday afternoon. Mark was away on a business trip, a 3-day conference in Santerre. And Francisco. He'd left a meticulously detailed itinerary, a precise schedule of calls and meetings. He had kissed me goodbye that morning, a chaste peck on the forehead, before instructing me to make sure the recycling went out. Sad, I'd watched his car disappear down the drive, a strange blend of relief and sorrow washing over me. The house felt vast and empty without him, amplifying the silence, making the loneliness scream. Leo called me that afternoon, his voice a low rumble through the phone. "Hey, just checking in. The storm's really picking up." He knew Mark was away. I knew he knew. "Curious." There was a charged pause, a silent question hanging in the air. "I'm fine," I managed, my voice thin. "Just, the house feels a bit big." Long pause. Another pause. "I could come over," he offered, his voice soft, almost hesitant. "Bring some coffee, keep you company, just for a bit." Rushed, my heart leaped into my throat, thundering against my ribs. Every fiber of my being screamed, no, danger, betrayal. But another, more primal part of me, a part long starved, cried out, yes, warmth, connection, whispers. "Okay," I whispered, the single word feeling impossibly heavy, irrevocable. He arrived 20 minutes later, soaked from the rain, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. He carried a bag with artisanal coffee beans and a package of my favorite biscotti. The scent of rain and his subtle cologne filled the entryway. Surprised, I remember the exact moment I opened the door, the chill wind whipping past me, the drumming of rain against the glass, and the sight of him, standing there, a question in his eyes that mirrored the chaos in my own. We exchanged a look that held volumes, fear, longing, complicity. We made coffee, the mundane act of fragile shield against the burgeoning tension. The kitchen, usually a sterile, ordered space, felt charged, alive. His presence was so different from Mark's. He didn't fill the room with his presence, but somehow settled into it, like a comfortable, worn piece of furniture that still held stories. We sat at the kitchen island, sipping the rich, dark coffee, the silence between us heavy with anticipation. He talked about his latest photography project, about the challenge of capturing ephemeral light. I listened, truly listened, the sound of his voice a balm to my frayed nerves, even as my mind raced. Then, his hand reached across the marble counter, covering mine. His touch was gentle, warm, and sent a shiver through me that started in my fingertips and spread like wildfire. My breath hitched, my gaze locked with his, and in the depths of his dark eyes, I saw my own vulnerability, my own desperate need for something real. Something intense. The rain outside intensified, a violent symphony against the windows, reflecting the storm inside me. The bedroom was dimly lit, the heavy curtains drawn against the storm. The air was cool, almost sacred in its stillness. He turned to face me, his hands finding my waist, his thumbs tracing slow, deliberate circles on my skin, even through my sweater. My eyes fluttered shut. When I opened them, he was closer, his face inches from mine, his breath warm on my lips. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice hoarse, a plea and a promise all at once. And then his lips were on mine, Soft at first, exploratory, then with a sudden, overwhelming hunger that consumed me whole. It was like finally, being able to breathe after years of suffocation. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, until there was no space left between us. Every touch, every kiss, was a revelation. It wasn't the familiar, comforting routine I had with Mark. This was raw, fervent, consuming. It was like I was seeing, tasting, feeling for them. The very first time. His fingers unbuttoned my blouse, slowly, deliberately, each button a small explosion of forbidden thrill. The cool air on my bare skin, then the warmth of his hands, sent goosebumps across my arms. My bra fell away, and I felt utterly exposed, utterly vulnerable, yet strangely empowered. Gasps. When his lips trailed down my neck, to my collarbone, then lower, I gasped, an unfamiliar sound escaping my throat. The scent of him, an intoxicating mix of rain, his cologne, and something distinctly masculine, filled my senses, making my head swim. We sank onto the bed, the rustle of the sheets a loud counterpoint to the pounding of my heart. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty now, only a ferocious, desperate hunger that had been dormant for too long. My hands explored the planes of his back, the firmness of his shoulders, the texture of his skin. Every nerve ending in my body felt alive, hypersensitive, exhaled sharply. When he finally entered me, it wasn't a gentle communion, but a fierce, almost violent meeting of starved bodies. A moan escaped my lips, half pain, half exultation. It was a release, an explosion of sensation that shattered the carefully constructed walls of my polite existence. The climax, when it came, was a torrent, a physical and emotional upheaval that left me gasping, trembling, tearful tears silently tracking paths down my temples. For a brief, dizzying moment, there was only sensation, only now, only him. Then, as quickly as it had arrived, the storm within subsided. He collapsed beside me, his breathing ragged, his arm heavy across my stomach. The rain outside had softened to a gentle patter. The silence in the room was no longer charged with anticipation, but with a crushing weight of reality. My body, still humming from the intense experience, suddenly felt dirty, tainted. A wave of nausea swept over me. I turned my head, staring at the ceiling, the familiar patterns now mocking me. Guilt. A sharp, icy blade pierced through the afterglow. It wasn't a dull throb anymore. It was a searing agony. What have I done? The words echoed in the desolate chamber of my mind. Beside me, Leo stirred, then pressed a soft kiss to my hair. I didn't respond. The warmth of his body against mine, moments ago a source of exquisite pleasure, now felt like a suffocating burden. My perfect, fragile life had shattered. And I was the one holding the hammer. Sad. The days that followed were a surreal blur, a tightly wound performance of normalcy punctuated by moments of searing panic. I became an actress in my own life, meticulously crafting a facade for Mark, for our friends, for the world. Every morning, I'd pull on the mask of the devoted wife, the cheerful homemaker. My smile felt plastered on, my laughter brittle, echoing in my own ears as a hollow sound. Thoughtful inside, a relentless, suffocating dread had taken root, coiling in my stomach like a venomous snake. Sad, our home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a stage for my elaborate deception. Every object seemed to scrutinize me. The framed photos of Mark and me, our wedding portrait, even the innocuous throw pillows. They were silent witnesses, accusing me with their very existence. Frustrated, I'd walk past Mark's study, where he was engrossed in his work, and a wave of icy shame would wash over me, leaving me breathless. Thoughtful, I found myself obsessively cleaning, polishing surfaces until they gleamed, as if I could scrub away the stain on my soul with bleach and elbow grease. Sad. My phone became both a lifeline and an instrument of torture. Leo's texts still came, now tinged with a desperate longing, a shared secret that bound us in a sickening web. Thinking of you. Are you okay? Or, can we talk? Rushed, each notification sent a jolt of panic through me. I'd snatch my phone up, heart pounding, quickly checking to make sure Mark wasn't nearby. Thoughtful. I kept my phone on silent, constantly turning it face down, fearing a misplaced buzz, a curious glance from Mark. My once open, carefree demeanor transformed into one of constant vigilance, my eyes darting nervously, my ears hyper-tuned to every sound. The near misses were excruciating. One Sunday, at another family brunch, Mark suggested we all look through Leo's new photo portfolio. My stomach dropped. Leo and I exchanged a fleeting, terrified glance across the table, a silent communication of shared dread. Mark, oblivious, excitedly pulled out the heavy book. My palms began to sweat. As he flipped through, he paused on a landscape shot Leo had taken a few weeks prior. Beautiful, Leo. You must have taken this on that rainy Friday, the day I was in San Francisco. My breath caught in my throat. My vision narrowed, the room spinning. I felt a cold prickle of sweat on my forehead. Leo, ever the artist, calmly replied, "Yes, actually. The light was incredible after the storm, made for some dramatic shots." His voice was steady, composed, a testament to his poker face. I managed a weak smile, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, digging me. My nails into my flesh to ground myself. Long pause. The moment passed, but it left me trembling, my nerves frayed to breaking point. Sad. The affair continued, albeit furtively and infrequently. Stolen moments in his apartment when Mark was genuinely busy, a quick lunch that turned into a frantic hour in a cheap motel. Thoughtful. Each encounter was a roller coaster of emotion. The initial rush of exhilaration, the desperate craving for connection, the fleeting euphoria, then the immediate crushing shame that followed. Sad. The passion was still there, wild and potent, but it was now laced with a bitter aftertaste, a self-loathing that grew more pronounced with each stolen kiss, each illicit touch. Crying. I would cling to him, not out of love, but out of a desperate need to feel something, anything, beyond the soul-crushing emptiness of my double life. Frustrated. But even those moments of connection, once so liberating, had begun to feel like another cage, a trap built of my own making. I was suffocating under the weight of the lie, choking on the hypocrisy. My soul was twisting into knots, and I felt a profound, aching disgust for the woman I had become. The breaking point arrived not with a bang, but with a whimper, a quiet unraveling of my meticulously constructed facade. The incessant tension had begun to hollow me out, leaving an echo chamber of anxiety and self-hatred. I was a puppet, my strings pulled by fear and guilt, dancing a gruesome ballet of deceit. I couldn't look at Mark without a fresh wave of shame washing over me. His unsuspecting kindness, his genuine affection, now felt like a heavy cloak of judgment, suffocating me. One Tuesday evening, Mark came home from work with a small bouquet of my favorite white roses, a spontaneous gesture. He handed them to me, his smile warm and genuine. "Just because, darling," he said, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. "You've been a little quiet lately. Everything all right?" His concern, so innocent, so heartfelt, uttered something inside me. My vision blurred. I wanted to scream, to confess everything right then and there, to tear down the perfect illusion. Instead, I mumbled a choked, "Thank you," the scent of the roses suddenly nauseating. I turned away quickly, escaping to the kitchen, pretending to fuss with a vase, anything to avoid his searching gaze. Sighs. That night, lying beside him, the silent ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall was deafening. Sad. I felt a visceral revulsion for myself. The guilt, once a persistent ache, had transformed into a relentless burning inferno. My chest felt tight, my lungs struggling for air. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of my own lies, the water dark and suffocating. The physical manifestations were unmistakable. My heart raced erratically, a persistent tremor in my hands, a knot of nausea that wouldn't dissipate. I closed my eyes, picturing Mark's unsuspecting face, and a fresh wave of self-loathing washed over me. Frustrated, I couldn't bear it anymore. The constant vigilance, the fear of discovery, the relentless charade, it was slowly, irrevocably destroying me. Thoughtful, I knew, with a terrifying clarity, that I had to end the affair, not just for Mark, but for my own sanity, my own fractured soul. Sad, the thought of contacting Leo, of speaking the words, sent a fresh wave of dread through me. But the alternative, this living death, was far worse. The next morning, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold my phone, I composed a text to Leo. It took me 20 minutes. My fingers hovering, deleting, rewriting. "This has to stop. I can't do this anymore. It's killing me. I pressed send, my thumb feeling like a stone. The response was immediate. Sarah, please, let's talk. I need to see you. I steeled myself. No, Leo, no more. It's over. A deluge of calls and texts followed. Pleas, confusion, anger. I ignored them all, my resolve hardening with each vibrating notification. It was agonizing, tearing a fresh wound in my already bleeding heart. I felt a searing pain for the hurt I was inflicting, but it was a necessary cruelty. The affair had to die, or I would. I spent hours replaying the confession in my mind. The words caught in my throat, tangled in fear and shame. How do you tell the man you married that you betrayed him with his own brother? What words could possibly encapsulate such a devastating truth? I imagined his face, the slow dawning of comprehension, then the heartbreak, the anger. The physical sensation of panic tightened around my throat, making it difficult to swallow. My stomach churned, a cold sweat breaking out on my skin. I would pace our living room late at night, the silence amplifying my terror, my bare feet cold against the polished wood floors. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of torment, the decision solidified. I could not, would not, continue to live this lie. The weight of it was too immense, too soul-crushing. I owed Mark the truth, no matter how excruciating, no matter the consequences. It was the only path, however brutal, towards any semblance of integrity, any hope of redemption. I resolved to tell him that night. I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second, steeling myself against the tsunami I knew was coming. The taste of salt was in my mouth, the prickle of tears behind my eyelids. I opened them again, fixing my gaze on his. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump into the abyss. I have to tell you something, I said, each word a splintered shard tearing at my throat. Something terrible. My voice trembled, but I forced myself to continue, forced the words past the lump in my throat. The truth, finally, painfully, spilling out into the quiet, candlelit room. I cheated on you, Mark. With Leo. The words hung in the air, shattering the silence, shattering everything.